Hi everybody, welcome back to another episode of Boomin with Bella. I am your host, Bella Lainez. I apologize for the hiatus. Life got crazy. The Knicks won the NBA finals, so therefore I was like outside every other day. Then it was like the Puerto Rican Day Parade. Everyone I know had a birthday. I never really had time to sit down and record. I thought about this episode so long ago and I started researching and compiling everything that I wanted to talk about in it a month ago, and I just finally got the opportunity to sit down and talk with you about it. So I apologize for the hiatus. I mean, we all know summer's a little crazy. Alas, I do want to remind you guys to go ahead and follow @BoominWithBella on all social media, as well as if you are listening to this episode, subscribe to wherever you are currently listening, or follow, whatever the option is there. And if you are watching on YouTube, go ahead and click that subscribe and like this video. And make sure that you are following Boomin with Bella everywhere. If you watch and listen to podcasts, subscribe on both. That way you never miss any Boomin with Bella episodes ever. I did do a brief one on the Knicks the morning of the 5th game. And that was just kind of talking about the music that I've been hearing. Intersection of music and sports that I was witnessing and kind of just songs to celebrate that. Today's episode, I got inspired a little while ago. Part of it kind of came to me during our Super Bowl halftime performance rewatches, believe it or not, but also because if you don't know by now, I do Peloton strength classes in my gym as like my lift section of my workout, and then I go and I do my cardio. But I do just their classes because it's 6 in the morning. I don't want to think. I just want someone to tell me what to do. My rests are baked into the program, and I just don't have to think about a single thing except for like what dumbbells I want to use. So I've been doing a couple classes with Jermaine Johnson, and in one of his classes he played this song, and I started thinking, wow, this is one of the best songs ever made. And two, I was like, I actually kind of want to do more research on this topic in general. So basically, the song was Walk This Way, Run DMC, and Aerosmith, and the topic that it made me want to talk about is rock and hip hop, but specifically this song. So I have my handy dandy notebook here of everything that I kind of put together and researched and read about, like the process of making this song, what this song did, and its impact, some other examples of rock and hip hop intersecting, and kind of why that works, as well as like kind of where we are now. It might seem a little like different than our previous episodes, but I kind of found that this is something that interests me, is like doing the research and then coming on here and talking to you. Other times I just yap out of my head, and this time's gonna be a little different. So without further ado, let's talk about Walk This Way, Aerosmith and Run DMC. When you think about the birth of hip hop, one of the groups that you think about is, and that is often brought up in conversation, is Run DMC, which is made up of Jam Master Jay, Daryl McDaniels, and Joseph Simmons. Joseph Simmons was Run, Daryl McDaniels was DMC, and Jam Master Jay's real name is Jason Mitchell. Their debut single, It's Like That, changed the game, and it kind of rescued the reputation of rap at that time. Their style more so reflected a street aesthetic to which the average b-boy on the corner could relate to, instead of what had been before them, which was like a little unattainable. Via The Guardian, at this time, Aerosmith was kind of in a slump. Their album sales had like peaked and then steadily declined since the 70s. They hadn't had a Billboard top 10 single since the original Walk This Way. By the time that this collaboration even kind of came to be, Jam Master Jay had already been cutting Walk This Way between his decks for years. Run had been rapping over it since he was like 12. And they had done previous attempts at a rock rap hybrid, one example being the song King of Rock, which I actually listened to and it's kind of very good. At the time, other artists had also kind of experimented with the mixing of rock and hip hop. The Beastie Boys sampled AC/DC's Rock Hard, LL Cool J did Rock the Bells, and then of course Run DMC, King of Rock, but none had reached the level that Walk This Way would. So what ended up happening is that Rick Rubin from Def Jam sold Aerosmith on the idea as a great crossover opportunity for both of the groups, which it later proved to be. In an interview for the Washington Post, he said that He was looking for a way to bridge the gap in the story of finding a piece of music that was familiar and already hip-hop friendly, so that on the hip-hop side, it would make sense, and on the non-hip-hop side, you'd see that it wasn't so far away, like it wasn't so outlandish. He called Tim Summer, who's the Aerosmith manager, and said, I need a white rock song that can be turned into a rap song. And Tim Summer infamously said, what's rap? Allegedly, Steven Tyler was immediately on board, but Perry was not, and his 15-year-old stepson had to teach him what rap was, who Run DMC kind of was. Steven Tyler in his memoir explained a lot of what happened that fateful day, because they recorded it in one day. March 9th, 1986 was that day. And Steven Tyler wrote in his book that Run, D, and J were huddled in a corner, really intent on something. He goes to Joe, Joe, what are they doing? And Joe says, probably smoking crack. Tells you right there how much the two groups knew about each other. Steven Tyler writes that later we go over to them in the corner and they had been eating lunch from McDonald's. The other conversation of it is just the contrast and the differences between, formerly successful white rock stars versus newer black hip hop artists in the 80s, was that Aerosmith was getting paid $8,000 while Run DMC was not, and they had to do it in one day because they were worried about getting their rental car back in time. The assumptions between the two immediately grew clear, and that there was a understanding that needed to be had between the two of them. I think that's just a really interesting piece, what their first assumptions of each other were versus the truth. How they were able to reflect that in the music video. If you haven't seen the music video, it's a kind of cool music video actually. It's the two bands. Obviously starts with Aerosmith. Aerosmith is rehearsing in one room, Run DMC is rehearsing in another, and they're kind of having a loudness war. And then eventually they join forces when Steven Tyler smashes down the wall in between them, which kind of symbolizes smashing down the wall between the races, the genres, the groups, and quite literally the rooms. And the two groups storm a theater stage to screaming fans. The song was so successful that it fully broke Run DMC, and by extension rap music, into the mainstream, and further legitimized the genre in the eyes of a white audience, especially a audience that predominantly listened to white rock stars. And from there, Run DMC was the first rap group on the cover of Rolling Stone, whereas for Aerosmith, the success of the song brought them another life. Gave them a second wind. The song was played on contemporary hits radio format, which was new for them. One of the brilliant things about this that was written in this article from The Guardian was that the crossover for Aerosmith was generational and giving them another life and introducing a new fan base to them, a new generation of younger kids to them. Run DMC's was racial, breaking them into the white mainstream audience, and along with that, rap music. As well as now going back to Aerosmith's second wind, their next album following this single sold 5 million copies, which is 10 times more than their album prior to Walk This Way did. And now the name meant something. Previously, in the average American household, you said Aerosmith and it was kind of oh, those old guys. In the UK, it meant something different. But here, kind of but now in collaboration with Run DMC, this was a household name, a household topic. The song then fully goes on to open up the doors for more rock rap collaborations. We see groups like the Beastie Boys follow this model and sell a hip-hop heavy metal hybrid to the suburbs and make a brand, a being out of it. We'll talk more about that later, about the Beastie Boys and kind of what came after later, but for now I want to go through this article that I read via The Medium that talked about the marriage of rock and hip-hop. Prior to the 1980s, there weren't that many examples, especially that I recognized. I mean, maybe you might recognize, Dad if you're listening, Mom too, but a lot of these were songs that I didn't know, don't really hear much of. The Animals, Year of the Guru, 1968. The Stooges, I Want to Be Your Dog, 1969. The Talking Heads, I know that band, but I don't know the song. Cross-Eyed and Painless, 1980. Psychedelic Furs, Wedding Song, 1980. Kiss, I love Kiss. All Hell's Breaking Loose, 1983. Those are just some examples of times where rock and hip hop tried, but it wasn't anywhere near the success and the level that Walk This Way was. I wanted to know kind of why they work so well. So what I found was that obviously both hip hop and rock are two of America's most culturally significant musical movements. If you think about back to the beginning, why these genres were kind of created and the lyrical content of these artists that really paved the way for the genres, they're very, very similar in their motive. Both genres were born in marginalized communities, inner city neighborhoods, and kind of started as like a grassroots movement before evolving into massive mainstream popular commercial forces that eventually influence and borrow from one another. Hip hop was obviously born in the 1970s South Bronx. 1973, DJ Kool Herc hosted a party and pioneered, well, I mean, he had been doing it before the party, but the party is kind of where everyone kind of plants like the birth of hip hop. But he pioneered the break beat technique, which created a continuous loop for dancers. And then over the breaks, MCs began to deliver rhythmic, rhymed spoken word to hype up the crowd. And in 1979, it became mainstream with Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper's Delight. Rock was born in the 1950s, rooted in African American culture. Specifically was a merge of rhythm and blues, gospel, and country music. It was pioneered by artists like Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and heavily centered around electric guitars, heavy drum beats, and lyrics pertaining to youth-centered topics, but also as well as calling out social injustices and being a political expression. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s is where a bunch of subgenres were built, which is where I feel like we see the 2000s, a lot of subgenres of hip hop were more so born. Some of these subgenres that appeared in the 1960s, 1970s, and I bring this up because Aerosmith does fall under one, were like psychedelic, British Invasion, American punk, heavy metal, and rock was starting to be seen more as like serious art and like a form of, again, political expression. Hip hop rock was born in the 1980s. And Run DMC and Aerosmith are credited as the pioneers of this subgenre. And then in the 1990s, after the song had kind of made the waves that it did, opened the floodgates, we have groups like Rage Against the Machine, Beastie Boys, Limp Bizkit, Linkin Park, and then even more so nowadays, early Post Malone. He doesn't do, I mean, a little bit now that he's like kind of going back to country. If you really take a listen, like a lot of his stuff does have a lot of like rock influence as well, even though it was considered hip hop. So the likes of Post Malone and Machine Gun Kelly. Obviously rock hip hop is not as popular as it used to be in the 90s, but there's definitely still an audience for it and it's still kind of out there. If you think about it, like Post Malone had us all in a chokehold when he first came out. Those first two albums specifically. So there's still a demand for it. And I feel like another artist or group could definitely fly in there, or collaboration. I mean, Doja Cat did a cover of, I believe it was Celebrity Skin, and it was really good. I mean, granted, she didn't really add too much rap to it, but we do still see a lot of rock influences continuously shaping the sound of hip hop, rap music, even trap. A lot of samplings, a lot of incorporations of the electric guitar. I mean, we talked about it with Maroon 5 and Travis Scott at the Super Bowl halftime show in 2019. That was a bit of a rock hip hop collaboration. It's definitely still alive. I guess artists now are kind of trying to feel us out and see if it's something that we would gravitate to again, and I think the answer is yes. So if anyone wants to take a shot at that, please do so. But going back to it, the only thing that is to note that in the 1990s, all of those groups that I mentioned and that are credited as like popular, successful groups that were able to really profit off of being a hip-hop rock band were white. So there is that. However, even though these popular groups were all white, Rage Against the Machine and the Beastie Boys did bring, punk rock, but they brought it together with the social commentary that is typical of that of hip-hop, and that resonated with youth subcultures. And I know that artists like Rage Against the Machine and the Beastie Boys are loved by a wider audience. They did resonate with a mainstream, broad audience, spanning racial demographics. At the end of the day, Both of these genres have a shared impact. They served as platforms for the youth to rebel against status quo, injustices, societal rules. Obviously, we all know that in the 60s, 70s, that rock mostly tackled themes of anti-war and personal freedom, whereas hip-hop in the late 80s and 90s became a voice for tackling systemic racism, urban poverty, police brutality, inner city urban life, violence, and addiction, and more. That's kind of why the two genres work so well, because they're built on the same foundation: rebellion, raw lyrics, and rhythmic beats, as well as the fact that they are both rooted in Black musical traditions. The blueprint for rock hip-hop is considered to be Walk This Way by Aerosmith and Run DMC. I truly do think it's one of the best songs ever made. The way I feel when I listen to that, the energy that the song carries, and it's just, it works for every situation. It works for a workout, it works for a tailgate, it works for a pregame, because tailgate and pregame vibes can be different. It works for cleaning your room, works for folding your laundry, works for cooking, works in the shower, works while driving. It literally fits any situation where you could be listening to music, and I feel like personally, in my experience, I've never once reached for the skip button. But also I feel like in none of those situations would it like affect your mood negatively. I feel like in all cases it would elevate your mood. And I just think it's, I mean, obviously it is a song that inspired me, because it's inspired me to take a couple hours and do some research into the day the song was created, how it kind of came to be, and then why it works so well, and why rap and hip hop work so well, and almost like kind of made me wonder like why it's not still so widely popular. I do know that like times have changed, and there's a bit of a rock music drought, a bit of a garage band drought in this decade, and hip hop has gone more, I don't want to say digital in a way, but it's very different, very trap heavy. It's not even fully 808 heavy anymore, and that's great and all, but it's just, it's not the same as when obviously this song was created and popular, but I definitely think that there's room for it in the vast volume of music coming out. I do think that would be cool. It would be something different from what we currently listen to, but like, I don't know, especially nowadays, I feel like our generation is in need of like some rock music. All in all, I recommend giving the music video a watch, listening to the song, and letting me know if there's any situation where you find yourself not wanting to hear that song. I feel like that's like a new test. Like I want to hypothesize that. Is there any situation where Run DMC and Aerosmith's Walk This Way does not fit? Because I feel like the answer is impossible. The limit does not exist. But that's all I really wanted to talk about today. Not too extensive, I hope, and hopefully I didn't sound too much of like a robot. Because I like doing research and stuff, but I worry that I sometimes sound so like unnatural versus when I just talk off the rip. Obviously, this is not something that I needed to have my facts straight for this one. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you learned a little something or took something away, or maybe you're like gonna go rock out now. Either way works for me. Make sure you're following Boomin with Bella on all social media platforms, as well as if you are watching this episode on YouTube, subscribe and hit that like button. And if you are listening to this episode wherever you get your podcast, make sure you are following along so you never miss an episode of Boomin with Bella. Make sure that if you are listening or watching that you are checking out our link in bio to make sure that you are not missing any audio only episodes, because the minis are all audio only. So if you're hearing me talk about like that Nick's episode that I did and you're like, I didn't see that, it's because it was audio only. So make sure you check those out as well so you don't miss anything. Because even when I'm not doing a video, like there's still stuff out for you. Just gotta go find it. I'm kidding. I'll give it to you. Okay, talk to you guys again soon. Bye.